There is a kind of person you have met at least once in your life, maybe at work, maybe at a family gathering, maybe you sat next to them on a long flight. They were not the loudest in the room, they were not the most attractive by any conventional measure, they were not trying to impress anyone, and yet you could not stop paying attention to them. There was something about the way they carried themselves, a steadiness, a quiet confidence that did not need your approval to exist. You left that conversation thinking about them for days. What did they have that most people do not? It was not luck, it was not genetics, it was not money or status. It was something they had built, slowly, deliberately, through the choices they made every single day before anyone was watching. The Stoics understood this over 2,000 years ago. They called it virtue, not in the religious sense, not as a moral performance, but as a kind of inner excellence that shapes everything about how a person moves through the world. And here is what modern culture gets completely wrong. True attractiveness has almost nothing to do with how you look, and everything to do with who you are becoming. You might be thinking right now, I am past the age where any of this matters to me. But that is precisely where you are wrong. As people move into their 40s, 50s and 60s, the qualities that draw others toward them shift dramatically. Youth fades for everyone, but depth, presence and character compound over time. The person who has worked on themselves for decades carries a weight and a warmth that no young face can replicate. We are going to talk about 10 habits, not tricks, not shortcuts, but genuine daily practices rooted in Stoic philosophy that fundamentally change the way people experience you. Some of them will feel uncomfortable. Some of them will challenge assumptions you have held for a long time. All of them are real. The first of these is one that almost no one takes seriously enough. Speak less than you know. Seneca wrote that silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life. He did not mean that quiet people are weak. He meant that a person who has truly lived, who has seen enough, lost enough, learned enough, knows that words are not free. Every unnecessary word costs you something. It costs you presence. It costs you credibility. It costs you the rare impression of someone who does not need to fill every silence. Most people talk to be seen. The person who is genuinely compelling talks only when they have something worth saying. You have probably noticed this in your own life. The colleague who spoke the least in meetings was often the one everyone listened to most carefully when they finally did speak. Before you speak, ask yourself one question. Does this add something real, or am I just filling space? The second practice is about the moment most people handle worst. Controlling your reaction when friction arrives. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, a journal he never intended anyone to read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was not writing for an audience. He was reminding himself, a man who commanded an empire, that his greatest battle was always internal. Here is something most people in their 40s and 50s will recognize immediately: a family dinner. Someone makes a comment about your choices, your past, your opinions. The old version of you would have felt the heat rise. You would have defended yourself, or gone quiet and stewed for days. The person who has developed genuine self-control does something different. They pause, they breathe, they choose their response the way a craftsman chooses a tool, deliberately, without rushing. This pause, this single moment between what happens and how you respond, is where character lives. When someone cannot provoke you, cannot rattle you, cannot pull you down to their level, people begin to experience you as someone fundamentally different, not cold, not dismissive, grounded in a way that most people simply are not. The third practice is one most people overlook entirely: keeping the promises you make to yourself. Epictetus, who was born a slave, and became one of the greatest philosophers in history, taught one principle above all others: know what is in your control and what is not. Your word to yourself is entirely within your control, and it is the foundation of everything else. When you say you will wake at a certain hour, and you do. When you say you will not eat what harms you, and you do not. When you say you will finish what you started, and you finish it. These small private victories accumulate into something that other people can feel without being able to name it. The alignment between what you say and what you do, even when no one is watching, that is not a concept. It is something that radiates outward from a person who has practiced it long enough. The fourth practice is harder than it sounds, and most people underestimate how deeply it controls them. Stop seeking approval and mean it. Most of us have spent decades building our sense of self-worth on the reactions of other people. A compliment feels good. Criticism stings. Silence makes us anxious. And so we learn, slowly and without noticing, to perform, to say what will be well received, to soften our real opinions, to become a slightly blurred version of ourselves in order to avoid friction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." He is describing something most people never notice about themselves. Here is what approval-seeking actually looks like after 50. It looks like agreeing with things you do not believe because the room expects it. It looks like not mentioning your real interests because you are afraid they will sound strange. It looks like editing your stories before you tell them, removing the parts that might not land well. The result is a person who is pleasant to be around, but impossible to truly know. People feel that emptiness, even when they cannot name it. Practice saying what you actually think, calmly, respectfully, without aggression, even when you suspect it will not be popular. Not to provoke, not to perform rebellion, but because a person who stands behind their own thoughts is far more compelling than one who borrows the thoughts of the room. The fifth practice is one that separates people who grow from people who stagnate, taking full responsibility without drama. There is a specific kind of person who, when something goes wrong, immediately begins explaining why it was not entirely their fault. The circumstances were difficult, the other person was unreasonable, the timing was wrong. There is always a reason. And there is always an audience being asked to validate that reason. Stoicism asks something harder. It asks you to look at your role in every situation with honest eyes, not to punish yourself, but to grow. Epictetus put it plainly, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Think of a man who made a bad financial decision in his late 40s, lost a significant amount of money. He had two paths. The first, blame the market, blame the advisor, blame his partner for not stopping him. The second, sit quietly with what happened, acknowledge his part in it honestly, extract what he could learn, and move forward without needing anyone to feel sorry for him. The second man is rare. And the second man, without trying to be, becomes someone others want beside them when things get hard. The sixth practice is one people rarely think of as a habit at all, letting your body language tell the truth. The Stoics believed that the inner life and the outer life are not separate. How you hold yourself physically is an expression of how you actually are inside, and other people read it before you say a single word. Slouching, avoiding eye contact, crossing your arms, fidgeting when silence falls. These communicate something. They tell the people around you that you are not fully at ease in your own presence. And if you are not at ease in your own presence, why would anyone else be at ease in yours? Stand as if you have somewhere to be and are not in a hurry to get there. Make eye contact long enough to show that you are genuinely present. When you sit, Take up the space that is yours without apology. These are not poses. They are the natural physical expression of a person who has done enough inner work to be comfortable with who they are. The seventh practice is one that becomes harder with age, precisely because it requires unlearning something comfortable, cultivating genuine curiosity about other people. The older we get, the easier it becomes to stop being genuinely curious. We have heard enough stories. We have formed our opinions. We have sorted the world into categories that feel reliable. And slowly, without noticing, we stop asking real questions and start waiting for our turn to speak. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those who you yourself can improve." He is talking about a two-way exchange, not a performance of interest, a genuine willingness to be changed by another person and to change them in return. Think about the last time someone asked you a question and you felt they were actually listening to your answer, not preparing their response, not glancing elsewhere, not nodding politely while thinking about something else. Truly present with their full attention on you. How did that feel? Most people cannot remember the last time it happened, because it is genuinely rare. When you speak with someone, anyone, not just people you consider important, ask one real question, and then be quiet long enough to hear the full answer. Not the surface answer, the real one that comes after a pause. That pause is where the truth lives. And the person who is patient enough to wait for it becomes, in that moment, the most interesting person in the room, without saying a single interesting thing themselves. The eighth practice is one the Stoics considered essential, and one that most people in comfortable lives quietly abandon: embracing discomfort as a daily choice. Seneca described a practice of setting aside certain days during which you live simply, plain food, nothing extra, and then asking yourself, is this what I was afraid of? The point was never suffering for its own sake. The point was to prove to yourself, repeatedly, that you are stronger than your comfort zone. For a person in their 50s or 60s, this habit takes on a particular weight, because at this stage of life, comfort can become a quiet trap. The familiar routines, the predictable weekends, the slow narrowing of experience down to what is known and safe. It feels like rest, but over time it begins to feel like retreat. The practice does not need to be dramatic. It can be as simple as taking a cold shower and staying present through the discomfort instead of rushing past it. It can be walking into a room where you know no one and staying long enough to have one real conversation. It can be returning to a physical practice you abandoned years ago and accepting that you will not be good at it immediately. Each time you choose discomfort deliberately, you remind yourself of something essential, that you are not fragile. And a person who is not fragile carries themselves in a way that others find deeply, instinctively reassuring. The ninth practice is perhaps the most quietly radical thing a person can do in the modern world: spending time in genuine solitude, not distraction. There is a difference between being alone and being in solitude. Most people today are never truly alone. They are always accompanied by a screen, background noise, the constant presence of other people's lives. This is not solitude. It is populated silence. And it deprives a person of something the Stoics considered essential: the examined life. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private journal entirely for himself. No audience, no intention of sharing. He wrote to think clearly, to correct himself, to understand what he actually believed beneath the noise of running an empire. That practice, sitting with your own thoughts long enough to know what they actually are, is becoming one of the rarest things in the world. The quality that emerges from genuine solitude is hard to describe, but easy to recognize. It is a kind of settledness. A person who has spent real time with themselves does not need the room to validate them. They bring something into every conversation that was developed in private, an opinion that is actually theirs, a perspective that has been tested against their own resistance, a stillness that does not collapse the moment external noise disappears. Once a day, for at least 15 minutes, put down every device. Sit somewhere quiet. Do not direct your thoughts, simply let them move. Notice what comes up. Notice what you have been avoiding. The quality of your inner life is the foundation of everything else, and you cannot build that foundation in noise. The 10th practice is the one that ties everything together, and the one most people in our culture get completely wrong: aging with intention, not resignation. There is a widespread belief that after a certain age, the work of becoming is finished, that you are now simply what you are, that growth belongs to the young, and the rest is maintenance. The Stoics would have found this idea not just incorrect, but genuinely tragic. Marcus Aurelius was still writing his most profound reflections in the final years of his life. Seneca wrote his greatest letters as an old man, knowing he was dying. Epictetus taught until the very end. They did not treat age as a closing door. They treated it as the stage at which all the inner work finally had room to express itself fully. Aging with intention looks like this in practice. It means continuing to set standards for yourself, not the standards of your youth, but standards appropriate to who you are now and who you are still becoming. It means refusing the story that your most interesting years are behind you. It means investing in your mind, your body, and your relationships with the same seriousness you once gave to your career. A person who ages with intention becomes more compelling with every passing year. Not despite their age, because of it, because they carry the one thing that cannot be faked and cannot be rushed. The lines on their face tell a story. The steadiness in their voice comes from having been tested. The warmth in their presence comes from having lost enough to know what actually matters. You might be thinking right now, I have wasted time. I have not practiced these things consistently. I am starting too late. But that thought itself is the trap. The Stoics understood that virtue is only ever possible in one place, the present moment. Not yesterday, not when you are ready, now. Choose one practice from everything you have heard today, just one, and apply it before this day is over. Speak less in your next conversation and notice what happens in the silence. Take responsibility for one thing you have been quietly blaming on someone else. Sit alone for 15 minutes without reaching for anything. The practice you choose matters less than the act of choosing deliberately, because that is what this entire philosophy comes down to. Not perfection, not transformation overnight, but the daily, unglamorous, deeply human practice of deciding, again and again, who you are going to be. The most compelling people you will ever meet are not that way because of what they have. They are that way because of what they have built, inside, quietly, over years, through choices no one else saw them make. Stoicism does not promise you a better image. It promises you something far more valuable, a better self. And a better self expressed consistently through how you live, how you speak, how you listen, and how you age. That is something the world cannot help but notice. Start today, not because someone is watching, but because you are.